Students around the world are finishing their qualifications so they can get ahead in life and make their contribution. If you are studying, researching, or thinking about it, you will need practical tips, techniques, coaching, and support to help you get finished and be successful. I'm Peter Alkemer, the Student Success Coach, and welcome to the podcast. Each episode, I interview successful students and leaders in education so that you will learn everything you need right here. You will learn about writing, completing your thesis and other projects, planning, discipline, how to get more done, supervisors, getting published, getting finished, how to have the right discipline, and many other aspects of student life. Whether you're listening on Spotify, iTunes, Google, or any other podcast platform, please leave a rating and a review. Or if you're watching on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. Either way, please get in touch and let us know what you think of the show and what you want to hear more of. Please always check the show notes for links to courses, material, and plenty more so that you can use what you've learned in each episode, take action, and achieve your student success. Please also join the Student Success Coach community in our exclusive members-only Facebook group where I post regularly and you can interact with fellow students just like yourself. Remember, you can't do this alone, so reach out, get involved, and take advantage. It's my commitment to your success. Now for this week's episode. Phumzile, great to have you on the show today, and I'm just so excited to hear about all your success as a student. It's great to have you on the podcast. So just give us all an update. As I recall, you finished your MBA. Just remind me what exactly we're doing. And the last time we chatted was when I was sort of mentoring you midway through that. And then I think you graduated successfully. So give us all the good news.
Okay, so I was doing my master's in management in entrepreneurship and new venture creation at Wits Business School. Graduated I think July last year. So yeah, it was quite a journey, but I'm glad that's done and dusted for now. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So, and how was did you obviously have a physical graduation? Because I mean, I missed out on my PhD graduation because of the lockdowns.
Oh, yeah. So there was one, but I didn't attend. I'm a little bit about graduations. I don't like attending them. I'm like, just give me my certificate, thank you.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what happened with me. They just dropped off my certificate at the house. Yeah. Whereas I was looking forward to a lovely ceremony in the Wits Great Hall to celebrate the achievement of my PhD in front of my family. Which is something I think you worked very hard towards for about 4 years. So we sort of ended up in the same boat in terms of our certificates.
Yeah, just being dropped off.
Okay, fantastic, man. So, Phumzile, I mean, what our listeners will be keen to understand from you today is really just, what that research meant to you. And I remember bits and pieces of it and, some of the qualitative research that you were doing, etc. But I'm really interested in understanding, and what they'll be looking to hear from you is what that meant to you. Why you did it, what was it that motivated you to get into it, and whether that was the same at the end. I mean, so just give us a little bit of a sense of, the background to why you got into it. And I certainly recall you were very passionate about some of the aspects of your research. So really just would be great if you could bring that up again and refresh my memory and explain to everybody a little bit about what you did and why you did it.
I think personally, I wanted, because I'd done my postgraduate in honors, so I personally wanted a master's degree and eventually a PhD, because I think a part of me would like to teach. So I think that's the path that I wanted to follow, and hence I thought that a master's would be a great opportunity, and not just in terms of teaching or research, but also in terms of my career. So I opted for something that's quite different from the field that I'm in, which is HR. I opted for an entrepreneurship and new venture creation mostly because I don't feel like I want to be boxed into being an HR person, but I thought this would provide me a greater opportunity as well as understanding what's happening in the market, as well as more of a growth part for me one day in terms of when I do decide that I don't want to be in corporate anymore. And that's why I chose the master's. So in terms of, so we obviously started with the coursework, which that was the easy part.
Yeah.
Then we got to the actual research, which proved to be quite challenging. I mean, even deciding on a topic, and especially if you're not from an entrepreneurial background or you're not in that field working in it, was quite a challenging one. And I think that's when you and I met up in terms of trying to get a topic. And with VITs also, they sometimes quite strict in terms of the type of topics, as well as not just the topics, but in terms of whether you go qualitative or quantitative. So they usually prescribe quantitative, but you can go qualitative, but they usually say it's better to do a quantitative study. So I think when you and I got into contact and you started mentoring me in terms of my research, I had just started in terms of formulating my research topic, which was quite hard. I remember we had sessions like that. I think for me, I enjoyed more the literature review than the rest of everything, because
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Reading the literature, putting it together was the easy part for me. But I think the rest of it, in terms of understanding, once you've collected data, getting the data, and then using a statistical methodology, that was for me was quite tough. And even understanding and then having to formulate from what the hypothesis is and the stats that are from your survey. That for me was quite a challenging part. And obviously time management was another challenge on its own for the entire research.
Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about time management because, I mean, I think that's something common for everybody today. And I mean, you were studying part-time, but
Yeah.
just let's just talk through the methodology aspect. So, and I certainly remember that's, I mean, a number of our sort of mentoring sessions, we sort of focused on that just to try and get your thoughts clear about what you needed to do. What was it that you think was the biggest sort of misperception that you had, or the biggest breakthrough that you had in terms of overcoming that as a barrier to being successful? You know, looking back, what do you wish somebody had said to you that would have made it clearer or easier, that you maybe would say to somebody now that's sort of getting into that type of studying, that could just unlock it for them and just make it clearer for them?
I think when I look back, especially with the methodology part, was, so you obviously from your research topic, you have your constructs that need to be measurable. And when you go into a survey, I think the way I measured my constructs was, when I look back, some of those constructs weren't clear and they weren't linking, especially some of the survey questions that I had for each construct. I think that was when I look back, if I had a better tool in terms of my survey, I think it would have been a little bit better than the outcome that I had. So even with when I tested the hypothesis and the results from it, certain of the constructs, they were, when you looked at statistically, they weren't showing the right things. And even having to explain that when you go in the analysis part of your research methodology was quite a challenge for me. So I think if I spend a little bit more time in terms of the actual instrument, had it been tested before, is it reliable, and all those, ticking those boxes and the constructs that I used, I think it would have put me in a better position in terms of analyzing the data as well as putting together a conclusion. So yeah.
Okay. I mean, those are great insights, but I mean, to your point earlier, you did have limited time. So, I mean, you were working with what knowledge you had at the time. You know, it's easy to look back on these things. And I guess, you know, what you've learned now puts you in a good position for possibly a PhD and, you know, future studies, etc. So, okay, well, what I took away from there was just to have some clarity in terms of the instrument and then linking your constructs back to your hypothesis, making sure that it all flows through quite nicely. And then I guess, would it be fair to say, as part of all that, just keep it not simplistic, but keep it simple enough that you can bring it all together, you can have a meaningful interview with your participants, and you're not trying to get a Nobel Prize, for the best master's degree in the world. I mean, at the end of the day, you just want to graduate.
Yes. I think one of the challenges that one thing after saying that is my instrument or my survey questions, there were too many. That was not necessary, and people would drop out of the survey. So there was a high dropout rate. Some people did complete it, but if I kept it shorter, more people or participants would have probably been more willing to complete the survey. So very true in terms of we tend to complicate things.
Yep. How many did you get in the end to complete?
I think just about 100, or just a little below, because I remember with my supervisor said you need to get 100 in order for in terms of the statistic part to make it a little bit easier. So I think it was just a little bit over 100 if I'm not mistaken.
And just to give me some idea of it, how many questions were in that survey?
Oh, okay, I can't remember, but it probably took a person, if I'm not mistaken, will take a person almost 30 minutes to complete it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how did you, so 100 people, 30 questions, and it was an online, if I remember, you used SurveyMonkey or something like that. I can't quite remember. Online survey tool.
That VITS tool, I forgot what it's called.
Oh, yes. Okay. All right. But it was an online tool. And then how did you get your participants? How did you manage to get people to get in touch with people to fill in the survey, etc.?
So initially I thought it was going to be a piece of cake, which proved so, and especially my demographic was female entrepreneurs.
Okay.
So that's a small demographic. So I reached out to people. So there was a friend of mine who already had a database of people, and he had already gotten his participants the number that he required, so he forwarded that to me. I also used Instagram because my research topic was how do entrepreneurs use social media as a platform. So I started using Instagram, Facebook, and messaging people, which actually quite helped because people would respond to the surveys that were interested. So I started being resourceful in terms of finding participants.
Okay. No, I think that's excellent. I mean, I think that was a good sample size. And you must send me your report. I'd like to have a look at it. And I do recall from our sessions that you did have some contacts in that space, and you had some insights from, I think, some journalism work that was done, or some awards, etc. So you had something to work with, which sort of helped you, but you still had to do a lot of work to get to 100 participants.
Yeah, you had to talk people to get that.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so good. So I mean, you had to work hard to get your participants. You would have, maybe kept your survey a little bit simpler. Okay, and then that all sort of flowed through into your analysis and your data. And I mean, just so sort of moving now onto the time management aspect, but I mean, just to stick with the process a little bit for now, would you have done things a bit quicker or moved the different phases of your research along slower or at a different pace? Did you find that you compromised any aspects of it because you had to rush, or you thought you had more time left than you actually did, etc.? I mean, so just talk to me about, thinking about how much time you had available and how much time you gave to each section of the study that you had to do.
So honestly, with the time management, obviously I was working full time and then having to make sure that I'm submitting on time, or the supervisor was quite a challenge. But one of my biggest pitfalls, and now I regret it, was my referencing.
Okay.
dropped my mark drastically. So I think people underestimate the referencing and how much weight it holds in terms of when an external person is looking at your paper, or even the internal people at VITS. So that impacted me quite a lot. And I even remember my supervisor saying that I should spend some more time fixing my references, because my research is good, but if I'm not fixing my references properly according to the VITS standards, then that's going to impact my mark drastically. So I wish I had actually listened, but I was time pressured. I had to submit. It was the final, and I didn't want to extend it because I was honestly at the point where I was about to break. But in hindsight, I wish that I took put in a request for an extension just to fix my referencing, or that from the start, when I started with my paper, that I use the necessary tools in order to make sure my referencing is correct. That's quite a huge of your mark.
Yeah, no, for sure. I
Yeah.
mean, so just coincidentally, I mean, I don't know if I will send you my course that I've just completed and launched a couple of weeks ago about how to reference using EndNote and some of the principles and practices of getting referencing right, because it is such a big issue for students. And as you experience, something that perhaps if you had spent a bit more time on, you maybe could have got a better result, just given that it had a higher weighting than you realized.
Yeah.
And it also takes a while to kind of get your head around how it works, and when you cite something and how you set up the reference and bring it into Word and link it in your references at the back, and whether you have a separate library on EndNote or Zotero or something like that.
Yeah.
All those issues.
Technical.
Exactly. So Phumzile, I mean, those are all good aspects, academic aspects of studying and things where students can develop skills. And like I say, and as I think I mentioned when we had our coaching sessions, a lot of what you're learning there, if you don't go on to do a PhD, that's no worries. But if you did, then a lot of it you've now got some familiarity with, and you'll be able to go into a PhD a lot better informed about it. But maybe just looking back again, and you mentioned just now that you were about to break, you were under a lot of pressure. And I mean, I do remember a couple of those times when you were severely sort of stressing a little bit, and you'd have to put in a couple of very late nights to get things sorted, etc. And just, I mean, again, congratulations for getting through it. And you've obviously grown and learned so much as an individual. But just, take us in and, talk to our listeners out there who are maybe just also really not getting enough sleep, they're struggling, maybe they've got family commitments, maybe they're working part-time and they just don't feel like they're getting through it. What was it like at the time? How did you get through it, and what would be your advice to them?
I think so. At the time, it was quite intense because obviously I had to start with the coursework, and when you go into research, you haven't even recovered from attending classes and all the assignments and exams that you've had to do for the first year. And then you go into the research, and obviously it's a new process. Some of it you're still learning yourself, and you're expected to deliver. And at the same time, you're also managing home life, work life, and you're also expected to deliver in that aspect as well. So to be honest, there are points where I did break, and there were points where I did sleep on campus, and I only went home to shower to get to work the next day. So it was quite, you learn a lot. But I think what balanced me was that where I could, I tried to keep a balance in terms of working out and making sure that the physical and the mental part is taken care of. But literally, I think one thing you need to accept when you're doing a master's, especially if it's an intense one, is that you need to probably let people around you know in advance before you even register, in terms of for the next 2 years or whatever the length of the program is, that you're not going to be as available as you were before. It's going to probably consume your life. And obviously you also need to get better at also when you do have that break, or when you can take the break, prioritizing people that are important to you in your life, to make sure that they're still at balance. But obviously, honestly, does take over your life, because you are managing work as well as your personal life. So you can't get away from that. It's letting people know heads up or letting them know in advance that it's going to be your life for the next 2 years. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. And I think just managing their expectations about you, the fact that you've only got 24 hours in your day, and this is something that you want to do, and you've made it a priority in your life, and you are asking that they accept that. And it's not going to be forever, but it will get back to normal. And during that period, you'll do your best, but you're asking for their sort of commitment and patience in the process.
Definitely.
Okay. And do you think you did enough of that from your own experience, or is that something you learned during the process and maybe would do better, or slightly differently if you were going to do another degree?
I think for me, luckily enough, because I'm not married and I don't have kids, so there wasn't that added much pressure in terms of family life. It was just managing probably my siblings or friends. But I think work for me was a huge juggling between work and studies, which I didn't anticipate, because you're literally on campus sometimes until 1 a.m. And then you're expected to be in the office by 7:30, and you're supposed to have a full working day. And then you're repeating the same cycle over and over. So obviously at some point you're crashing, there's a burnout. And sometimes the focus in terms of between work and school, the split focus also. So I think for me, that was the biggest impact, my managing my work life as well as my study life. I didn't realize when I started my master's, the impact that would have.
Okay, got it. And Phumzile, now so now you graduated and you got your certificate, and I mean, you did some research in an area that obviously you were passionate about, entrepreneurship, and specifically females in entrepreneurship, etc. And you obviously balanced your passion with actually getting the degree. But I mean, just looking back now, did it achieve what you wanted to? And I mean, what was your definition of student success? I mean, if you look back, what was the biggest thing that you got out of it? And was that good enough for you? Did it balance out? Did you feel like you got value from all that time and the sacrifice and the late nights? Okay, why do you say that?
No, and I'm just saying, okay, in terms of your question. So I think I have a split view about it. So what I appreciated about the program that I did, and also my research topic, I spoke a lot about social capital and innovation. So in terms of those two aspects, I can see it in my current job, where there's a lot of focus on innovation and being, how do we then start to change the mindset of people to become more entrepreneurial, implementing innovative ideas. So I see that aspect in terms of, obviously, from what I got from my master's, that there was a huge focus on innovation, entrepreneurial mindset. But in terms of the research topic, specifically in terms of just focusing on female entrepreneurs, not so much. But I don't think there's a misalignment in any way. I mean, even from the current job that I'm in, there's a lot of focus on Black women-owned enterprises. How do we start targeting that? How do we start incorporating that into our business and focusing on that? So might not be a female entrepreneur right now, but obviously there's certain elements that I see within my job or my current position where there's an alignment, or I can integrate what I've learned into those areas. Yeah.
Okay, so you feel that your research did give you extra insights into your industry. Okay, because you obviously interacted with or at least surveyed the insights of those 100 people, and you applied a hypothesis and you did some analysis. So your research gave you some depth into that, and possibly extended existing research, so made a contribution to the broader industry, which is great, but I mean, if you now have a goal as an individual of being an entrepreneur, would you think that studying further is going to help you achieve that goal? Or is it about getting out there and just following that dream? I mean, is studying, and I get really mixed views from people. I mean, I think, yes, it's good to have the qualification, it's good to get the insights, etc. But is it quicker just to spend the time doing the thing you want to do? Is studying really going to give you a quicker route there, or just is it more depth and a richer experience along the way? What's your view?
I think my view is the last point, where it gives you a deeper and richer view. So it's more, for me, I think that's what studying does. Would it make me an entrepreneur? No, I'd have to take probably the risk. I'd have to probably have a plan in place. I'd probably have to be able to see opportunities where I am, or seek opportunities. But I think I would be in a better position, because I have that foundation, I have that knowledge, and obviously the social network that you do gain along the way also is quite helpful. So for me, I always think that education is important. I think it's an enriching process. You become, and for me, it's not just about whether it impacts your career or not, but as an individual, in terms of how you start thinking. Your thinking changes, your thinking process changes, how you articulate yourself changes a little bit. When you have conversations with people and what they're saying, you're able to analyze what they're actually saying and if it makes sense or not. And for me, I saw that after I finished my research, where even when you're analyzing an article or even literature review, you're able to get the key parts, the gaps, and actually if it's relevant or not. And that makes it better when you conversate with people, or argument or debate, where you understand what the person is saying, but you're able to understand the gaps. And also, basically, for me, that's what education is. That's what research does. It's your thinking process and analyzing and being able to go through the process, for me.
I love what you said about the mindset, because I think for me, I certainly felt that it does open your mind, and it does give you a new perspective on things. And if you are able to do both, so chase the goal, but have the richer experience and the improved mindset along the way, I think that's incredibly powerful. And I'm just interested, the results from your research, did you find any patterns in, female, Black, woman-owned or entrepreneurial businesses that you had studied that surprised you, or that you felt, aha, that's fantastic, I would not have been able to find that out if I hadn't done my study, and which potentially you could then use to do future research on, or open up new lines of business or areas that you'd like to explore in future? Just give us a texture maybe of some of those results and what that's meant for you specifically.
Okay, so in terms of my research, so what was the gap in literature was the fact that with female entrepreneurs, in terms of social capital, they don't have access to the strong network, which allow them to gain access to the financial capital resources required to make sure their business are sustainable. So my research was that, has the implementation or the introduction of your social platforms, your Facebook, Instagram, and all these allowed them to gain access to the social capital networks that they wouldn't have had, or they don't have at the moment, because obviously they don't know people, or they don't have access to that. So for me, what was surprising that women are using that different social platforms to connect with people in order to either start a business, or for them to make their business to become more sustainable. So that was my hypothesis. So yes, it was quite surprising that women are starting to using social media or platforms as an alternative, because they might not know the right circles of people to gain that financial or investment that they need. So they've opted to reach out to people on social platforms, or use even the Instagram account to find people to invest in their business or business solutions that they do have.
Okay, and obviously it was in a South African context. So, and do you find any of those entrepreneurs being able to monetize their brands on those platforms at all yet, or was it more for the networking and the interaction for their business?
So I don't see with the results. It wasn't in terms of monetizing it or their financial component. It wasn't as strong, but they were able to gain a lot of networks or people to actually start engaging with, which is something that they wouldn't have had previously, because of obviously you need to know the right people for you to start that engagement with, as opposed to you're able to reach out to someone to even give your consideration of pitching your idea or what your business is about.
Okay, so in other words, it removed some of those barriers, and as quickly as you were able to set up a profile on a social media platform and to interact with like-minded people using keywords and other search criteria and to establish yourself, it almost flattened that network, if you like, and gave you instant access to other like-minded people that were also willing to interact and network on those platforms. And obviously there are many that, you know, aren't interested in doing that. But for those people that are interacting in those platforms, it was quite powerful and beneficial for them in that network. That's what you found?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, super. And last question, I mean, and then let you go. I know you've got a busy day, but what's next for you? And I mean, just specifically academically and for yourself, I mean, what does the future look for you? Are you going to do a PhD? Are we going to see you up on the stage there? What's next for you? What's the big goal?
So to be honest, I do want a PhD, but I'm also a bit two minds about it right now, because in terms of how the market is right now, I mean, the main focus now is future skills. What type of skills do we need now in order to prepare us for the future? So I think I've put a pause on my PhD at the moment. It's something I'm just going to think a little bit longer about. But for me, I just want to focus on the different types of future skills that I need to be focusing on, whether it be design thinking, creativity, problem solving. So I think my focus for the next year is going to be just upskilling myself in terms of future skills. But with, I think in the back of my mind, thinking in terms of my PhD and which area or topic I'd probably want to focus on if I continue with my PhD. But it's probably at this point 70% chance that I will do a PhD.
Yeah. Well, that's wonderful. And I mean, I think it is one of those decisions that you must take enough time just to be certain of, because it's going to be an even bigger sacrifice, and you're going to have to be certain that you went into it with the right mindset, as you say. But I certainly also feel that the ups and downs of your master's level study, you know, has positioned you well, not only to number one, make that decision, but number two, also to be successful in doing a PhD. And the time also allows you to pick the right topic and the right sort of area in which you really want to go in and explore and sacrifice, you know, a big chunk of your life. So that's absolutely fantastic. And then last question, just if you were to go back in time and tell your you know, old self, you know, starting out on that journey a couple of years ago, what would be that single piece of advice that you'd give them?
Oof. I think going on an academic journey is something you should never regret. It's something you should always pursue, purely because the way it changes your mindset and how it opens you up to a new experience. So some people might say that, oh, but I didn't get the dream job that I wanted. But for me, it wasn't. I don't think ever about that when you go on your academic pursuits. It's about just changing your mindset, how you think, and how you position yourself at the end of the day. And for me, that's always been important, and that's why I've always loved education. So I would always say, Carrie, always pursue the academics no matter what.
That's fantastic, Phumzile. Thank you so much. I got so much out of our chat today, and it's so good to see you just really confident and building on your success and continuing on in the path that you are. And look forward to being in touch further and having you back on the show. You know, as you go into a PhD and following you on that journey and picking up the tips and techniques that you learn along the way that so many other people are going to find so beneficial from you. So is that possible? Can we have you back on the show and have another chat at some point?
Definitely. I'll let you know when I start my PhD journey.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you, Phumzile.
Thank
I appreciate it so much. Eh?
Okay then. Bye.
Okay, ciao, ciao. Thanks, eh?